so much for joining us for this Queen 6 presentation. I'm Elizabeth Din. During this Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we are proud to share stories with you that help showcase the diversity of Portland and our surrounding area. We begin with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which hurt and disrupted many lives. This created an absolute ban on Chinese laborers immigrating to the United States, marking America's first significant law restricting immigration. It also placed new requirements on those already in the country. If they left, they had to get certifications to re-enter, which was very hard to do. One place that witnessed the impacts of that Exclusion Act is Huber's Cafe, which holds the distinction of being Portland's oldest restaurant, established in 1879. Today, James Louis Kai is a third-generation owner. His great-uncle, Jim Louis, immigrated to the U.S. before the Exclusion Act was signed. Jim used to cook the now famous turkey dishes and much more before he'd go on to take half ownership in 1941.
He saw an opportunity to build a better life for himself, and so in spite of, say, discrimination back in those days, he hung in there, and like I say, he made a living for him, his brothers, and his wife and kids.
That's one of many stories, and I encourage you to dig deeper to learn much more, whether that's online, in books, or visiting places like the Oregon Historical Society and the Portland Chinatown Museum. In fact, that's where we head to in my next story. You mentioned this is a special place for you. Why this is so meaningful for you every time you set foot in here?
Yeah, the Portland Chinatown Museum is very meaningful to me because my family, several generations, lived in Chinatown, going all the way back to the 1870s when my great-great-grandparents moved here from San Francisco, Chinatown.
Darby Lee Poe Price is a docent for the Portland Chinatown Museum who enjoys leading in-depth tours. While telling me about the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, he explains how it directly impacted his own relatives.
This is a photo of my great-great-grandfather in 1903 with his three youngest sons.
Darby's great-grandfather, Joe Chin, used this picture as part of an application to return to China to find a second wife. That's after his first spouse died. He had a store to run and couldn't take care of the young children on his own.
So he came back from China a month later after finding a wife, and they told him, you can't come back in because you don't have proper documents saying that you ever entered the U.S. legally.
Despite living and working in the U.S. for many years, Darby's great-grandfather and his new wife were forced to go back to China.
For a lot of us, it's easy to be like, that's a painful part of my family's past. I don't want to touch that. You look at it a different way.
I grew up not knowing much about the Chinese family history, and I encountered elders who didn't want to talk about it. They said, well, that was really unpleasant. You know, that was then, this is now. Let's just talk about now and the future. But then there were other elders that would talk about it, and I would ask them a lot.
That curiosity grew into a career for Darby, who was also a professor of Asian American Studies.
I was really fortunate to get enough information from elders to get names and dates that I could bring up to the Seattle archives. And they have an incredible collection of immigrant records on Chinese. The Chinese are the most documented ethnic group in America for immigration purposes. I found hundreds of pages on them. I found all these incredible photographs. And now read the interviews and just get full histories. I was approaching it like a detective, like an investigator, like, wow, you know, like a researcher.
Through that research, Darby also discovered how his great-grandfather Joe had quite the determination to return and resettle in the U.S.
So he found white witnesses that had done official business with him, like tax collector, the person who had collected the bill for the cemetery for his wife, and they came forth and they said, yes, we've known this man for 15, 20 years. He is who he says he is. So 2 years later, he was allowed to come back in.
It took him 2 whole years.
So the children had no parents for 2 years. By then, they were already placed with other people to take care of them.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the resiliency in your family and so many families.
Resiliency is something that we can learn from the difficulties of the surviving family that we had.
Darby is one of many docents who lead tours. To take one, be sure to make a reservation ahead of time at the museum, or of course, you're welcome to visit on your own as well. They're open Thursdays through Sundays. There is a trailblazer on the ice here in Portland. Brenna Green sat down with Winterhawks right wing Marcus Nguyen. And while we celebrate Asian Americans, we want to note how this Canadian Asian is making waves here. He helped lead the team to the Western Hockey League finals.
Did you know that there's never been a player of Vietnamese descent that's made the NHL?
Well, I think I didn't know that like as a stat, but that's pretty cool.
Marcus Nguyen was born to a dad who immigrated to Canada from Vietnam and a mom of South Korean descent in Calgary on August 2nd, 2004. Maybe, just maybe though, his parents knew his fate before he even came out of the womb.
My dad's favorite player watching was Marcus Naslund on the Vancouver Canucks, so that's why I think that's why my mom told me she wanted a different name, but my dad wanted that name.
So you feel like it was kind of destiny then?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
The currently 19-year-old's parents got him involved in hockey at just 4 years old. It's not a sport that's super common among Asian families. There are only 12 players of Asian descent in the NHL right now.
Before here, I mean, just how many other Asian hockey players do you think you played with?
Before Portland?
Yeah.
Probably one. Throughout all the teams I've been on, I've been on a different team pretty much every year. There hasn't really been another Asian guy on the team.
That has changed here in Portland though, as there are 2 other Asian players on this Winterhawks squad.
No, it's pretty cool to see that that side of things grow. I'm proud to represent, and I'm proud of who I am and where I come from. So yeah, it's really good, I think.
And Marcus hopes one day he can represent on the biggest of stages, as he has an opportunity to knock down a door no one else has.
Would it mean something to you to be the first Vietnamese player to make?
Yeah, 100%. That'd be definitely a dream come true for sure.
Now to a local woman who is sharing her Indian culture in many ways, from the influence on her business to connecting thousands of area moms.
Childhood memories influence Pallavi Pandey's business, Detox, compostable dinnerware made from palm leaves.
And after living here for 18 years, I miss the street food in India, and especially eating on leaves with your hands. So all that was so magical, and I missed it so much. I was like, how do I introduce this experience to my daughters who live here? And we barely go to India. It's once every 4 years. So I'm like, how do we make sure we have a representation of our culture? And that is why I started this brand with that mindset of bringing that cultural experience to everybody here in the U.S.
Pallavi aims to be a strong example for her 2 daughters. She also works to empower the women in India who make her products. And here in Portland, she connects nearly 2,000 South Asian moms through a Facebook page she created 8 years ago. It's called Portland Brown Mommies.
We try to do some activity, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, leadership, business related, mom related, social circles, babysitting, whatever it is. We do once a month meeting for sure.
We've all played card games with our family, friends. They can be a fun way to interact and bond with others and encourage friendly competition. But have you ever played Mahjong? It's a tile-based game that developed first in China. Kelly Bayern gets a closer look at the game and how it's still being enjoyed today.
This is Mahjong, a game that originated in China some 300 years ago. Today, the game is widely played all across Asia, but popular in Portland too. Every week, the Mahjong meetup gets together for game night, where familiar faces gather to take each other on tile by tile. And with my limited experience playing Mahjong as a kid, I wanted to relearn the game, and this group threw me right in. I felt blind. Without Ernie next to me as my personal teacher, I'd be at a loss.
Ernie's your safety net.
Yeah, time out. Ernie, what do I do?
There are so many rules.
Okay, so the main goal is to get these sets or these runs.
Basically, your hand consists of 13 tiles, so 4 runs and sets. Your goal is to get the hand with the most amount of points, and some combinations of sets and runs are worth a lot more.
So how long did it take you guys to learn hands?
Still
Long time.
learning.
Yeah.
Because it's almost impossible to commit them to memory. There are 81 combinations.
Yeah.
So
Let's back it up and learn more about these tiles.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the suits. I
For
see
sure.
basically 3 different suits here.
Yeah. We have the number tiles, the character tiles. We have the bamboo, and we have the circles,
Okay,
the dots,
it's all 1
pins.
through 9.
1 through 9.
Okay.
Ren is the current host of the Mahjong Meetup and a huge advocate of getting folks together every week to play.
It's really interesting. You know, we have people from all walks of life in it. You know, as I said, we have people who've been playing it since they were children, and we've had people who, you know, have never played Mahjong before.
It's been really cool to see how many people, when I've mentioned playing Mahjong, that they raise their hand and go, oh, I used to play.
Yeah.
I love the game too. So it's such a popular game because of its historical roots. It's been around for a long time. Like, this was originally a Chinese game. I just remember being in China and watching my relatives have the most heated game.
Oh, yeah.
And it was my aunts and uncles and my mom, 4 of them at the table, and they are pulling out money and
yeah.
they were gambling, and there's a lot of energy. So I would love to recreate that. So I actually brought some fake bills so we can gamble. You want to teach me how to play?
Let's go. Let's go.
And after another round, the game started to click.
What if someone wants the same tile?
depends on where you're sitting. If somebody needs the same tile to win, that's top priority.
And there was some smack talk too.
Bernie, I'm gonna warn you right now. I'm one tile away from a big hand.
We're two-way.
I have a bigger hand than you, though.
Probably.
I don't think so.
No, I have a bigger hand.
Uh-oh, okay.
I'll tell you right now, it's bigger.
I'm glad I got Ernie on my team. I feel confident with our hand. I don't think you're gonna get lucky.
I'm going to get lucky.
Your turn.
The game is similar to Rummy, with luck involved too. And the thrill really comes when you pick the tile you needed and further your hand closer to the win.
The higher the hand, you know, the
The
more
harder it's gonna be to get it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that
Now,
was what
you
we
only have
wanted.
one to go.
Win or lose, the gameplay is more about the company.
This is so exciting.
I win.
See?
And that's what the Mahjong Meetup is all about.
I win.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh no.
Mahjong.
And when you replace the cards with intricately decorated tiles,
Okay, so what exactly is going on here?
Oh, that's a
Greater honors and knitted tiles.
you're enjoying the traditions of China and one of its oldest games still being enjoyed today.
All right, if you'd like to learn how to play Mahjong as well, the Meetup hosts informal games every Tuesday at the Encorepreneur Cafe. You can find more info about their group at coin.com. And we have much more after the break, including an important conversation about breaking the silence on human trafficking, an often overlooked issue, especially hurting many Asian and Pacific Islander communities. And later, food unites us. So does social media. We'll introduce you to a local foodie influencer. Welcome back. When you hear about Vietnamese history, many people often think of the war. Now, nearly 50 years since it ended, there are Vietnamese Americans who want more stories to emerge about the people, the culture, and much more. Helping to document those personal accounts is Lillian Pham, a Portland State University student who is pursuing a Master of Fine Art in Contemporary Art Practice. And she's doing this with help from a $10,000 PSU prize. Well, I talked with her last year about this project called Thương, that's Vietnamese for love. Lillian is using different kinds of media, including photos, audio recordings, even augmented reality to preserve the stories of many different Vietnamese Portlanders. I caught up with her again as she's now months away from presenting it.
It's really hard to find stuff, and it's always like about the war, and then even going further, like it's always how Vietnamese people are in relationship to their assimilation in Portland into the U.S. So I'm really excited that this archive is gonna bring more fun and joy to like the archives and like what our identities are and like expand it.
She will eventually have these living archives available for people to check out, and you'll get to see them in an exhibit from September to December. A problem that's often overlooked is human trafficking. For those who may have language and cultural barriers, it can stay hidden when people don't know how to report it or who to turn to. In January, the Portland Police Bureau and its Asian Pacific Islander Advisory Council had a first-of-its-kind event addressing this topic at Mekong Bistro. Branching off from that event, that restaurant hosted us to have a roundtable discussion on the need to create awareness, including among Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth. I am Natasha Hansberger, a Portland police officer.
As a community engagement lead for the Portland Police Bureau, she works to build partnerships. A war refugee who moved to the U.S. in 2001.
My home country at the time was Yugoslavia. We had a civil war in '91 that led to ethnic genocide, conflict, and atrocity against humanities, which eventually the journey ended up in Oregon for me.
Lee Cha is executive director of IRCO, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization.
I've been there for the last 42, going 43 years this July. The organization served my own family. When we came to the state exactly in '78, my family came to the state of Oregon, and I came as a young man, had the opportunity to attend high school here, and then go on to college.
So my name is Tak Sanale Gillespie, and my roots are from Laos. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand shortly after the secret war in Laos, also known as the Vietnam War. We arrived in the late 70s, so similar to Mr. Lee.
Her personal experiences amplify her role as director of Oregon's Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement. On the issue of human trafficking, each person here feels it's often overlooked.
I'll be honest, this conversation about human trafficking is not often talked about at the state level or at the city or at the county level. It's often really, I don't know if it's taboo, but it's just not brought up. It's not something that gets a lot of visibility.
So admittedly, we have to have these conversations more and more.
When it comes to foreign born human trafficking, it is very hard. I think we have situations that, maybe restaurant owner may innocently try to get help, but then what they end up doing is, they're engaged in human trafficking. Every aspect of the help that they are seeking, they feel like they've been threatened. And even though our law enforcement is supposed to be helping them, but they become the most difficult people to approach. Because in their mind, as soon as I see law enforcement, I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be, deported. And because deportation is something that their owner is always going to be, forcing on them.
Yeah, I've had my share of learning about this topic, unfortunately, through community relationships, as Officer Natasha was talking about. I think the challenge with this is the awareness, right? Like many of the folks that I've engaged with around this topic who have lived experience first don't even know it's a thing, right? Some say that it's part of their karma.
They think they deserved it.
This is what this is part of my journey. This is part of my karma. There's nothing I can do, right? It's something I did in the past life, right? And there are some who are like, I am grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have a job. I'm grateful to have made it here safely. So why would I argue with that? Why would I create any change in my life, right? I would be seen as ungrateful. And then there's the power piece, right? Well, particularly in at least I'll speak for in the Southeast Asian Lao community, right? Men, women, there's a difference in gender, and that power piece also comes into play. So to your point, it is very complex, and my experience has been so varied, and it's fascinating to see while we're trying to help people get out, there are folks who are like, get out of what? Right? This is a part of my journey.
What can all of us and the people watching this, what are things that we can do to be more aware of how to spot that before we start the conversation?
I have to say, we often ask our survivors and victims after we do our interviews and series of interviews, where we failed you. Did you ever have ability to interface a police officer, a nurse, a teacher and signal, and we just didn't see it, right? Because they will rarely, if ever, call 911. It's most likely going to be an ER nurse doing a random, medical screening and just asking questions, basic questions. Are you safe? You look distressed. Use a language interpreter. Do not use people that are accompanying a possible victim, representing themselves as family members, aunties, partners. Be cautious about that. Ensure that a victim or survivor has utmost privacy and offer them independent language access to be able to tell a story, right? Because they're so language dependent, they're identity dependent in a way. One of our survivors from Southeast Asian country told us it was her first time accessing and going into church, a faith-based environment, that she was able to gradually, slowly expose her story. And it was the church community that alerted law enforcement. So it is going to be a network of community partners, neighbors, just seeing an anomaly.
Food can bring people together, and coming up, meet a local social media influencer who's connecting people to tasty experiences that often involve Asian food. Welcome back. Yvette Chow is a local content creator who uses her platform to share Asian American culture. With nearly 100,000 followers online, she's highlighting the best of what our area has to offer. And Queen 6 meteorologist Kelly Bayern recently went to lunch with her to learn more about her story and their shared Asian American experience.
Wow, it's such a nice day outside. Did I feed my cat? Gosh, I'm so hungry. Oh, that looks so yummy. I wish I was eating that.
You rang? Whoa, Yvette? Are you hungry? I'm so hungry. Let's go! So for dim sum, I have a few staples I like to get. The first one is pork shumai, and then hakgao, which is the shrimp balls. Love those. So you are a foodie in Portland and Beaverton. You influence a lot of people to eat really good food. How did you get into that? Actually, it started a long time ago, probably when I was a kid, because my dad, my birth dad, he was a chef at MGM Grand, so food was really a big part of my life growing up. And then my mom would cook at home a lot as well. So I was just always surrounded by food. I guess food is just a universal language, and it's something that anyone can connect on. And as I got older, I realized I want to share my culture with other people, and it's fun to talk about food. And I started TikTok about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and I just decided to share food, and that's kind of how I got started.
Y'all, there's another new Korean restaurant that just popped up in Beaverton.
What I love about your TikTok is it really does make this food and this culture like approachable and not so foreign to people who are interested in eating this type of food, who may not know about it, and just sharing it in a very friendly way. You said you grew up coming to this restaurant. How has the food scene kind of grown over the years? Growing up, there wasn't many Asian places in general to go to, but Beaverton was definitely more of the Korean hub, and now it's grown so much. I would say East Portland is way more Vietnamese, Chinese culture are centered. And then Beaverton is more Korean, actually. There are Korean restaurants on the east side, but to me, this is like a little K-town. How do you find a worthy spot to highlight? I just explore a lot and see what I like. And if I really enjoy something, then I'll showcase it and, take videos and then share it on my TikTok. But I just try to go to different places as much as possible. What was it like growing up here? So I grew up in Corvallis, which is predominantly white. It was tough not looking like everyone else. I definitely wanted to blend in, and I wanted to be white. I wanted to feel included and not look different and eat different food and stand out. But luckily the community was pretty good, pretty accepting. So I didn't have a really, really hard time. I just internally wanted to look like everyone else and be like everyone else. Yeah, I feel almost differently being half Chinese, that it is kind of hard to find a place where I fit in, because I just want so badly to kind of be seen as Asian. I almost feel like I have to prove that I'm Asian in some kind of way. When I went to Korea for the first time in college is when I really, truly loved and accepted my culture and heritage. And it was just a great time to learn more about who I am and my family. I hope Portland keeps growing. Yeah, just constantly evolve.
You can follow Yvette on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got a sense of the diversity in our area, and may it influence you to not only appreciate where we live, but also encourage you to go on and learn much more about one another, maybe even reflect on your own family's history. We also have more stories for this Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month at Coin.com, including interviews with musician Joe Kai and sommelier, that's a wine expert, Ron Acierto. He works at the James Beard Award nominated restaurant Okta. Again, thanks for your time. Take care.